So this is verse 27 of chapter 2. Whoever is born, for him, her, death is certain. And whoever dies, for him, birth is certain. Therefore, there is really no point in having anxiety or grieving over what is inevitable. Whoever is born, death is certain. Whoever dies, birth is certain. Therefore, there is really no point in having anxiety or grieving over what is inevitable. So there's some great stuff here. The first thing is actually the second piece, which is whoever dies, birth is certain. It's a little charged, I think. And I think it overshadows the first piece, which is what I really want to emphasize. Whoever is born dies. What he's talking about here, Krishna's telling Arjuna, is that if you think that you are something, you have identified as something that has been born, that thing that you think you are is going to perish. Guaranteed. As we learned in earlier verses, creating, sustaining, and destroying. What is created will be dissolved. That's the core of the teaching. And then to say that's going to happen, a deep, deep acceptance can dispel the anxiety or the grieving over both any sort of loss, whether it's from you, your loss of your body, or the loss of something that you care about very deeply, someone you care about very deeply. Whoever is born dies. This is very interesting because in the verse before it, in the actual Gita, not the Dancing Beyond Thought collected works, so we can get a little bit of insight into why Krishna is telling us, if we think about the verse prior. And the verse prior, he says something to the extent of, if you're still willing to believe that you're your body, or if you're still unwilling to identify as the eternal self. I don't know if he says it as sort of condescending as I made it out just there. But he does say, if in fact you still want to believe that you are this body, you are these thoughts, this emotions, then know this. So it's a sutra, it's a line for moving on. Because many of the things that are going to wrap us up and keep us connected to this life are things that are about us, our identity to our body, the wants and needs that we have, and, sort of current talk in this sort of realm, we call it like your attachments. But your body is an attachment. Your thoughts are an attachment. And remember, the person that's ready for this teaching is one who's at wit's end. They've tried so many different options, so many attempts to make life as we know it work and have that lasting freedom and uncaused happiness that only comes with true identification with the self. This person nothing else is working. So he's saying, think about in your day when you're still feeling that this is about wanting to preserve or make better or improve this thing that's going to perish. It's very temporary. And the next verse that we're going to work on, I'll just reference briefly, we juxtapose it with, if this is going to perish, why do we hold on so tightly to it? We want it to live forever. We want it to last forever. And I like to make the realization that it's because our true identity is eternal, is living forever. In the sense that it's never going to die because it's never been born. We'll get more into that in the next verse, but there's a part of us that's seeking, yearning to feel the safety and comfort, the lasting peace that comes with knowing that we are eternal. We're even beyond the time itself. That part of us is still remembering that identity. But then it's confused. It's confused and it starts to fall back down and think, oh, I'm this body, and this body is perishing. I'm starting to kind of make that connection. And it's a little bit scary. Because if my body dies, what happens to me? So Krishna is saying, now this is where you can kind of think of it as maybe a little bit religious based on their prior understanding in things like the Vedas, where they talk about reincarnation, that whatever dies will be born. Now, my own personal experience, I can't validate that. I haven't been witness to, in my own experience, the actual reincarnating process. There's lots of great theories out there and faiths about it, and I think there's some measure to it. I've had experiences that are kind of far out. I said, whoa, there is something beyond this 5 sense reality. So maybe some substance to this reincarnation idea. Whatever dies is going to be reborn. But what's a level that we can all really get it on? What's a level where it's true, not a maybe true? This body is not what you are. This substance that makes up the identification, the persona that you call, when you say your name, all the little characteristics of it. All those things, when they fall away, when the last breath is breathed, dissolve and become food for something else, which then turns into life. So there is this, that I can see. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think it should make a lot of sense to you. That the decaying process, one of my teachers uses the word rot. Like rot, it's so grotesque and gross. But we talk about rot in the context that it's beautiful. It's like blooming flowers. That's literally what it's like for some other part of the living process. Something can't wait to eat you. The worms, maybe. And those things they're loving it. It's like payday. That the process of letting go of the identification with the body it's very easy. Because the life is continuing on and on and on. The body's perishing. It's going to be dissolved and reabsorbed and intimately woven back into the fabric of nature. Intimately woven back into the fabric of nature. So that's kind of what Krishna is saying. This process is natural. It has to happen. Whatever is born dies, and whatever dies is reborn. So you can kind of think of what that means to you. If you want to use the reincarnation motifs, or the sort of more like a biological motif, that's fine. But rather than think of it as whatever's dying is reborn, think of it as a whole piece of information. That transformation of what is quote-unquote living is constantly being cycled through this death, rebirth, life, death cycle. And if you catch yourself up, it's almost like a mistake. If you make the mistake of thinking that you are the thing on the wheel, on the edge of it, the body, there will be anxiety and grieving, because there's a part of you that knows you are more, you are eternal. And so it's going to be like, oh, let me try and do this thing to keep myself alive longer. Let me try to do this thing. I mean, there's techniques on literally trying to live forever, physically. Science is working hard at it. Because the mind has made a mistake and identifies as the body. But deep down, we know already. It was born, and it's going to die. Now maybe there's maybe some feelings of morbidity, a little dark to talk about. But they go right for it here in the Gita. It doesn't have to be dark. When you think of it as intimately woven with nature, you could try it. Just, you see something in nature, something alive that's perishing. You watch the way nature treats death. You go out into the woods and you watch something that's rotting. The trees are rotting, maybe even a dead animal. You watch. Nature comes up and fills it with life. And Krishna's saying this is not something to be grieving about or to feel anxious over. It's simple, it's natural, it's meant to be this way. To me, it's only really possible to make that transition, not fearing death, not wanting to acknowledge death, talk about it, feeling uncomfortable around it. It's only possible to make that transition to feeling okay and content with the idea when you get the knowledge of what's coming after, what the next verse is tonight, which is the real identification with what you are. It's much easier to let go of what you aren't once you've firmly established what you are. So I'll read this line one more time, and then we'll go on to the next verse. Whoever is born, death is certain. Whoever dies, birth is certain. Therefore, there is really no point in having anxiety or grieving over what is inevitable. So next, on page 14 of Dancing Beyond Thought, this is verse 20 of chapter 2. The self is not born, nor does the self ever die. Nor having been, does the self ever cease to be. Self is birthless, eternal, undecaying, ancient. Self is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. Say it again. The self is not born, nor does the self ever die. Nor having been, does the self ever cease to be. Self is birthless, eternal, undecaying, ancient. The self is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. So as I said in regards to the last verse, it's easier to come to terms with this natural cycle of things when we can really remember what in fact the self is. If, just imagine for yourself, you truly knew that that statement, that verse I just said, was 100% accurate. Could you appreciate the process of letting the body decay, melt back into the flow of nature, food for something else. If you knew that the self never changed, for me it's a very easy yes. I do. I watch this show unfold. I watch this process unfold. I watch my body grow up. I watch my personality grow up. My experience of life grow up. It's also kind of nice because you can let go when you find yourself stumbling. You make a mistake, that's part of the growing or the decaying process. It's very easy to stumble because it's not really stumbling. It's just complicated avenues of the living process, of nature's process. Making mistakes, finding your way into the environment, into the world. You let the body, emotions, mind, etc. do its thing. Fumble. Fail. Succeed. That's part of living too. And you can appreciate, there's an appreciation that comes. An appreciation is sort of, oh, it's such a beautiful story. It's a drama, it's a comedy, it's a whole vista of possibilities. And it's just a delight, an enjoyable delight, even to be in the dark times when things seem tough. Because there's this deep understanding that, at the end of the day, this is how it's meant to be. It's really how it's meant to be. But what comes in is very important, that the full identification of what the self is made. Oftentimes, before the full understanding has been brought, we try to make our body and our actions and our behaviors behave like a self, as though it was this eternal force. It's like maybe like a God complex or something, where it becomes impenetrable or tries to act perfect, bigger and better than human. This is pretend. It's shallow. It's naive. Our body, mind, our personalities, our egos are hopelessly broken. Broken in the grandest sense. Like it's meant to have to interact and participate with other things. It's meant to need things. It's meant to want things. It's part of its construction. That's what I mean by broken. Broken by design. Because nature is one giant pulsing thing. But when we falsely identify and see ourselves as only one little piece of it, the self says, oh, but I remember being perfect. And so then suffering comes. So what is the self? Why don't we start to separate it again? Start to forget this identification with the body-mind and remember what the self actually is. The very source, the origin, the center of your being. So the words used are birthless, eternal, undecaying, ancient. So in order to find out in an experiential way, as much as we can experience it, have that knowledge, we have to sort of go back in our inquiry. Anything that we think about ourselves that has a birth is not what we are. We say, no, not this. That's even a thought. That's even an experience. You have an experience of enlightenment. You have an experience of, aha, life is so great. I understand now. I get it. The experience does not bring the knowledge. It may point to the knowledge, but the experience is not knowledge of the self. The experience came out of the knowledge, and you covered it up again. The knowledge will last. It's already there. It's self-evident. You just take away the things that do have a birth, the things that are going away and changing. You just say, I'm not those. And it's self-evident. It is already present. It is already here. They say it's like the foundation. It's the substratum of which all the changing world is happening upon. So even as you listen to these words, you live your life, or your life is lived, you can become knowledgeable or aware that it's right here. It's already there. If you think you could hold it, if you think you could capture it in your thoughts, then you can hold it in your experience in the moment, that's not it. That's you trying to grasp at it again. It's already there. You cannot take it away. It is self-evident. Even awareness falls short, because we know what it's like to not really be aware. In deep sleep, maybe you're not really aware. Sometimes in your day, you're just kind of lost. You're not really aware. And so to just call it awareness as the eternal self, then it's, oh, I've got a goal now. I can work on being aware all the time. And then it starts the whole process of the ego trying to create the experience. Oh, I can just work on being aware. But this is the opposite. This is relaxing, settling back, realizing it cannot be taken away. It proves itself. It's not born, therefore it does not die. It's never even been here, so it can't cease to be. It's never been here because anything that we could say about it, it's not really the thing itself. It's beyond anything our sense body can come up with. But it is readily available because it is what you are. Your sense body cannot be aware of what you are. Your sense body is used to go find things that are separate from you. That's part of that interrelationship with nature. That's what you use your senses for. Some of those senses are very pleasurable. Some of those senses cause suffering, pain. So it's beyond the senses. It's beyond the thoughts. Because the thoughts are usually generated to help you navigate away from the things that cause you pain and navigate towards the things that bring you enjoyment. So how could your thoughts find it? Because your thoughts can only look for things that are outside of you. It's by the design. Try to create a thought that doesn't have that effect. I want this. I seek that. It's always outside. Self-evident. It's so simple. It's just gonna, like a light bulb goes on. The light bulb was already in the ceiling. You finally hit the switch. It's been there the whole time. We say it's false knowledge. False knowledge covers it up. True knowledge is very present. It's self-evident. So when you hear the words, that's the knowledge. That's the knowledge. And so take the words in The self was not born. The self does not die. Take the words in as knowledge, true knowledge. The self, that means you, means what you are. And you let it sit into you. You know, part of you, it's like trying to throw the bucket of water out of the boat. You want this boat to sink. You want this boat to sink to the bottom of the ocean. The boat is the awareness. You want the boat to sink to the bottom of the ocean because it is so filled with the knowledge of the self. The ocean's the self in my metaphor. So filled with the knowledge of the self, the boat sinks to the bottom of the ocean, you can't even see the false self anymore, the false knowledge. That bucket you used to scoop the water out of the boat, pretending you were something different. Self is not born, nor does the self ever die. Nor having been, does the self ever cease to be. The self is birthless, eternal, undecaying, and ancient. The self is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. When the boat sinks down to the bottom of the ocean and the bucket goes with it, the self didn't change at all. The ocean stayed exactly the same relative to that boat. All the false knowledge just disappears over time into the ocean. We want this boat to sink. Forget all this false knowledge. Life will still keep happening. That's what we learned in the previous verse. Life keeps taking care of itself. You keep taking care of yourself. Taking care of what you need to take care of, maybe other people too. Because it's already this way. It's already this way. And it's already been working just fine. It's like thinking that you're the boat and you gotta paddle the boat to move the ocean. Like when you move the boat, you paddle with the oars and it moves the ocean. And you think your ego is the boat. It's like you think you gotta move the ocean. And the ocean, it's like doesn't even make sense to the self. Like, okay, you can keep paddling, but you're not needed to be here. This ocean's gonna keep existing. Self-evident. It is very clear the boat that is on the ocean. By the nature of the boat. By the nature of your body-mind. Your existence as a being. This thing that we're talking about, this self, is foundational, fundamental to its existence. But the self does not depend on this in particular body. Come or go, the self does not change.